Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Please subscribe and keep watching more details. Chicago Fire's new transfer could fill the void left by these beloved firefighters. Matt Casey, Jesse Spencer, is, for many, one of the best characters in Chicago Fire history. He was not without his flaws, but he radiated decency during his time on the show, and managed a positive outlook in even the most dire of situations. He was the perfect counterbalance to Kelly Severide, Taylor Kinney, who has also been more of a rogue and someone prone to going with his gut. Severide is still around, obviously, but we have all been looking for another Casey, and we may have found our best candidate yet. Jack Damon, Michael Bradway, is officially part of Firehouse 51 again. The character was booted at the start of season 13, but brought back into the fold after his half-brother Severide and Stella Kidd, Miranda Ray Mayo, made a request. Damon may be related to Severide, but in temperament and an overall sense of positivity, he's very much cut from the Casey cloth. The firefighter cares about his fellow firefighters, is brave to the point that it makes cowardly peers from other firehouses insecure, and is romantically interested in a 51 medic. Sounds like Casey to us, given that the former standout is now living in Oregon with Sylvie Brett, Kara Kilmer, the medic that Lizzie Novak, Jocelyn Houdin, has replaced. As you inferred from the headline, there is another Chicago Fire character that Damon reminds us of, and he was actually positioned to be the Casey successor before his sudden departure. We're talking about Blake Gallo, Alberto Rosend. Gallo looked up to Casey and was absolutely beaming when the latter crowned him part of the old guard during the season 11 final. Gallo was another excellent firefighter who had an on/off romance with a medic, and given that he served under Casey, his succession was even more obvious. Unfortunately, the character left during the season 12 premiere and decided to move to Michigan. His tenure was cut short, and the absence of a Casey-like figure has been felt ever since. Casey and Severide were never going to be able to fight fires forever. Chicago Fire has been on for so long that we are seeing the generation we were introduced to seed ground the younger generation in an effort to keep things going. Sam Carver, Jake Lockett, has been positioned as a more intense and even more troubled Severide, and Damon, fully reinstated, seems all but locked in to take over Casey's spot, provided he sticks around longer than Gallo. It had been months since Firehouse 51 said goodbye to some of its most beloved crew members. The station still echoed with the absence of Matthew Casey's steady leadership, the warmth of Otis' jokes, and the fierce loyalty of Stella Kidd, now leading a new initiative in a different district. The firehouse hadn't quite been the same. Though the alarms still rang and the trucks still roared to life, the emotional heartbeat of 51 had taken a hit. But that was before her arrival. Firehouse 51's newest transfer, Lieutenant Mara Devlin, pulled up in a beat-up black Dodge Charger one brisk Chicago morning, her hair tucked under a baseball cap bearing the faded logo of FDNY Rescue 3. She stood at attention outside the apparatus bay doors, waiting to be buzzed in. From the moment Bowden met her eyes, piercing, calm, and a little haunted, he knew she wasn't just another transfer. She was bringing her own stories, her own ghosts. Bowden had read her file. Decorated in New York. 2 civilian saves in a collapsed high-rise, commended for bravery twice. Yet she requested the transfer to Chicago without much explanation. Some sort of personal restart, he suspected, but he'd learned long ago that sometimes the best firefighters were the ones running toward the flames in more ways than one. The first day was met with mixed reactions. Severide, back on leave temporarily, sized her up with his usual cautious curiosity. Ritter was friendly but nervous. He still missed Otis, and anyone stepping into that void triggered protective instincts. Mouch, gruff and grounded, tried to get a read on her over a donut and a cup of bitter coffee. "She's got that East Coast chip on her shoulder," Gallo whispered to Violet. "Like she's seen some things she won't talk about." Violet shrugged, but she watched closely. They all did. Devlin didn't try to charm anyone. She didn't tell war stories. Instead, she paid attention, watched drills with intense focus, took notes, asked for advice, not in a way that made her seem green, but in a way that showed she valued teamwork. In a house that still grieved its heroes, that kind of humility went a long way. Her first fire was a test no one planned. An abandoned warehouse in Pilsen lit up like a matchbox, and 51 was first on the scene. Inside was chaos, collapsing stairwells, flickering beams, and the cries of squatters who'd taken refuge from the cold. While Mouch and Herman worked to stabilize a teenager with a leg injury, Devlin disappeared deeper into the inferno. "No one told her to go in that far," Kid muttered into her radio, half expecting to call a mayday. But minutes later, Devlin emerged through the smoke, suit covered, jacket scorched, with a small girl wrapped in her arms and a frightened dog nipping at her heels. "You're welcome," she said, hoisting the child into the paramedics' waiting gurney. It wasn't cocky, just honest. From that moment, the tide began to shift. Slowly. What set Mara Devlin apart wasn't that she tried to be Casey or Otis or Kid. She didn't need to mimic their footsteps. Instead, she carved out her own space, one shaped by quiet resilience and a meticulous devotion to the craft. She was a firefighter's firefighter, the kind who checked gear 3 times, the kind who stayed late helping Ritter practice knots or offered to swap shifts so crews could get home to baby Brian. And yet, there was something behind her eyes. A sadness, perhaps. A story not yet told. Cruz, still raw from losing Otis and adjusting to fatherhood, was the first to ask, "You ever lose someone on the job?" They were on the roof after a drill, watching the skyline turn amber in the dying light. "Yeah," Devlin said after a beat. "A partner. He was my best friend." She didn't elaborate, and Cruz didn't push. He simply nodded. From then on, a mutual understanding formed, a quiet acknowledgement of shared pain and the long road back to normalcy. But it was Gallo who saw her most clearly. One night after a grueling double call-out, the team gathered around the table, laughing over Herman's newest horror story about a plumbing disaster at Molly's. Devlin, tired but smiling faintly, leaned back in her chair. "You fit in here," Gallo said, nudging a cold bottle of root beer toward her. "For now," she replied, sipping slowly. "Why just for now?" Devlin didn't look at him. "Because sometimes when you've lost too much, staying anywhere too long feels dangerous." That stuck with him. The idea that someone could be so good at saving others and still be afraid of sticking around to be saved themselves. But Firehouse 51 had a way of pulling people in, healing them in small, unspoken ways. Kid invited Devlin to a girls' night at Molly's. Violet started trusting her on calls. Even Severide, hard to impress these days, praised her instincts at a high-rise rescue that nearly went sideways. "She sees the job from angles most people miss," he told Bowden. "Like she's always 3 steps ahead." Bowden just nodded. He'd seen that too. And more. By spring, Devlin had become a fixture. Not a replacement. No one could ever replace Casey or Otis or Kid, but a new chapter. A fresh voice in a house still echoing with memories. When she organized a memorial drill in Otis' honor, even Mouch got teary-eyed, not because she did it for applause, but because she did it with reverence. Quiet respect. She remembered the ones who came before her, and in doing so, earned her place among the ones still fighting.